In a secluded rural settlement, a collection of presumptuous individuals cast avaricious gazes upon Otis Freeman's agricultural holdings, viewing it as easily attainable plunder. They perceived this portly, elderly black gentleman as enfeebled and sluggish. What they failed to comprehend was his background as a seasoned Navy SEAL, a combatant honed by decades of rigorous special operations training and unyielding self-control. Behind Otis's placid demeanor lay a lifetime of formidable strength and astute strategic thinking. As the threats intensified and the specter of violence loomed, these men utterly misjudged the ferocity of the guardian protecting his family's heritage. A dispute over land ownership, initially perceived as a simple disagreement, rapidly escalated into a high-stakes struggle for fundamental justice, compelling Otis to contend not merely for his farm, but for his very existence. Before we delve any deeper, please share your geographic location in the comments below, and remember to subscribe, as tomorrow's narrative is one you absolutely will not want to miss. The early morning sun cast elongated shadows across Otis Freeman's farm as he navigated the dew-kissed fields. His sturdy overalls stretched across his robust physique, and despite his considerable bulk, he moved with a measured elegance that hinted at immense latent power. Certain sections of the wooden fencing required repair, and the paint on the venerable red barn showed signs of deterioration. Nevertheless, he maintained each parcel of his ancestral land with evident pride. Otis bore 2 substantial feed buckets, one grasped firmly in each hand, his thick digits encircling the metallic grips. The poultry recognized his approaching gait and hurried to meet him, their excited clucking surrounding his worn boots. He distributed the feed in practiced arcs, observing the birds as they eagerly pecked at their morning sustenance. "Good morning, ladies," he murmured, his resonant voice barely audible. The gentle inflection seemed incongruous with his imposing presence, yet it perfectly complemented the tranquil ambience of the nascent day. From the farmhouse veranda, Shirley Freeman observed her husband with knowing eyes. She held 2 steaming mugs of coffee, her salt and pepper hair neatly tied back. "You're up early again," she called out, descending the weathered wooden steps. Otis turned, a faint smile gracing his countenance. "The morning waits for no one, Miss Shirley." He set down the buckets and accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing in a familiar gesture of tenderness. Shirley's astute gaze surveyed the property alongside him. "Thompson's son rode past again yesterday, the 3rd time this week." Otis nodded slowly, taking a deliberate sip. "WDE's people trying to send a message. I expect they're getting bolder," Shirley remarked, her legal acumen already contemplating potential scenarios since the announcement of the new development project. The couple stood in comfortable quietude, watching the dawn imbue the sky with vibrant hues of orange and rose. Their estate stretched before them, 60 acres that had been in Otis's family for 3 generations, acquired through immense sacrifice and perseverance in the era following emancipation. "Got that town meeting today?" Otis reminded her, commencing his walk toward the barn where the horses awaited. Shirley followed, her presence a steady anchor of support. Within the barn's confines, Otis began meticulously measuring oats for the equines. His actions were systematic, ingrained through decades of practice. "They'll try something," he stated matter-of-factly. "WDE's been itching for a confrontation." Shirley leaned against a post, her coffee momentarily forgotten. "You think they'll make their move at the meeting?" "Seems likely. Public space. Witnesses. They'll want to make a show of it." Otis's voice remained even, though a subtle hardening appeared in his eyes. The morning proceeded with their customary rhythm, tending to the animals, inspecting the fences, and discussing the day's assignments. However, an undercurrent of unease permeated the air, akin to the static charge preceding a tempest. Both felt it. Neither felt the need to articulate it. By late afternoon, they navigated their aging pickup truck towards town. The community center's parking area was already replete, predominantly with newer vehicles signifying affluence and status. Otis and Shirley entered in tandem, their heads held high, unfazed by the sideways glances and hushed whispers. The meeting hall was close and stuffy, with an abundance of occupants and insufficient air conditioning. Plastic chairs scraped audibly against the linoleum as individuals settled into their places. Near the front, Wade Graham and his contingent occupied an entire row, their presence impossible to disregard. Wade, decades younger than Otis, sported a close-cropped hairstyle and a perpetual sneer. His associates wore their prejudice as overt insignia, evident in Confederate flag patches, provocative slogans, and an aura of barely restrained aggression. The proceedings commenced with routine matters, budget reports, road maintenance schedules, and upcoming events. But when the subject shifted to the proposed new development, Wade abruptly stood, his chair emitting a loud screech. "Before we go any further," he proclaimed, his voice resonating clearly throughout the chamber, "we need to address the elephant in the room." His gaze was deliberately fixed upon Otis. "Some folks here are occupying land they have no rightful claim to." A palpable silence descended upon the room. Otis remained seated, his expression impassive, though his substantial hands rested calmly upon his knees. Wade continued, emboldened by the ensuing quiet. "My grandfather sold that land to legitimate farmers, not to interlopers asserting some archaic entitlement. We possess documentation that substantiates this claim." "Your grandfather's documentation would hold no merit in any court of law," Shirley interjected, her voice sharp with legal authority. "The Freeman family possesses clear title dating back to 1866. "Nobody asked you, woman," one of Wade's associates spat out. "We're discussing actual property rights here." Otis finally rose, his movement measured and deliberate. His sheer size seemed to dominate the room, yet his voice remained subdued. "My great-grandfather acquired that land fairly and squarely. We have cultivated it, resided upon it, and prospered from it for over 150 years. Wade advanced, his features contorted in anger. "You people always believe you can seize what isn't yours. That land ought to be integrated into the new development. Progress, you comprehend, yet you are impeding everyone. Sitting there like a foolish old glutton who's oblivious to the fact that his time has expired." The atmosphere in the room crackled with palpable tension. Some individuals shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others visibly nodded in agreement with Wade. Otis merely regarded the younger man, his expression unwavering. However, something in his steady gaze caused Wade's bravado to falter momentarily. "The deeds are officially recorded at the courthouse," Otis stated calmly. "Anyone wishing to verify them is most welcome to do so. Now, unless you have pertinent business for this meeting, I believe we were discussing the road maintenance schedule." The journey back from the meeting was characterized by silence, punctuated only by the crunch of gravel beneath the tires as evening descended. Otis maneuvered their old pickup into its customary position beside the farmhouse, but neither he nor Shirley made a move to disembark immediately. "They're not going to relinquish this matter," Shirley stated at last, her hands clasped in her lap. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windshield, accentuating the lines of worry around her eyes. Otis nodded slowly. "No, they are not." He extinguished the engine, yet kept his large hands firmly on the steering wheel. "WDE has been seeking a pretext. That development project simply provided him with one." Inside the farmhouse, Shirley moved with practiced efficiency through their familiar kitchen, retrieving ingredients for their evening meal. Her movements were sharp and precise, a testament to her extensive legal career. "We should meticulously document everything," she advised, chopping vegetables with practiced dexterity. "Every interaction, every threat build a substantial paper trail." "It's already commenced," Otis responded. He withdrew a small notebook from his overall pocket. "Times, dates, witnesses, precisely as you instructed me." A faint semblance of a smile touched his lips. The screen door creaked, followed by 3 distinct knocks. A familiar cadence. "Come on in, Dre," Otis called out without turning. DeAndre Willis entered the kitchen, his youthful countenance etched with apprehension. At 21 years of age, he carried himself with the wary vigilance of someone who had learned from an early age to remain constantly alert. "Heard about what transpired at the meeting," he reported, accepting the glass of sweet tea Shirley extended. Word is spreading rapidly. Pull up a chair, son, Otis invited, gesturing towards their well-worn kitchen table. You appear to have something weighing on your mind. Dre sat, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm against the glass. People are talking about forming vigilante groups, looking out for each other's properties, the younger generation. We're exhausted by enduring this constant disrespect. Shirley paused her culinary preparations, exchanging a knowing glance with Otis. And what is your perspective on that? She inquired carefully. I think, Dre began, struggling to articulate his feelings. I think I'm perpetually angry. My grandfather faced this identical kind of garbage, and now here we are, still fighting for what is already rightfully ours. His voice wavered slightly. How do you manage to remain so composed, Big O? How do you simply permit them to address you in such a manner? Otis leaned forward, his formidable frame causing the kitchen chair to creak. Who says I'm permitting them to do anything? His voice was quiet, yet it carried significant weight. There's a distinct difference between maintaining composure and being passive. One is a conscious choice. The other is outright surrender. He stood, motioning for Dre to follow. They proceeded onto the rear porch where the evening air offered a refreshing coolness. Otis gestured towards seemingly arbitrary locations around the estate. Observe those newly installed fence posts, the motion sensors, those security lights linked to a silent alarm system. That antiquated shed houses 4 high-definition cameras equipped with night vision capabilities. Dre's eyes widened slightly. You've been making preparations since the very day I acquired this property, Otis confirmed. Being ready is not synonymous with being fearful. It is a matter of self-respect, respect for your family, and respect for your legacy. From within, they could faintly discern Shirley conversing on the telephone, her voice imbued with the sharp authority that had once presided over courtrooms. Yes, I need to speak with Marcus at the county records office. Yes, I will hold. The sun had nearly completed its descent, painting the sky in profound shades of purple and indigo. Dre observed as Otis meticulously inspected every lock and every security measure. You truly believe they will attempt something? They already have, Otis replied, indicating recent tire tracks near the property boundary. They've been driving by, testing reactions, seeking vulnerabilities. He paused, carefully considering his subsequent pronouncements. When you have witnessed as much as I have, you learn to interpret the signs. WDE's retinue, they are deliberately building towards something significant. Each threat, each drive-by encounter, it resembles a countdown. As if precisely on cue, the distant thrum of engines disrupted the evening's tranquility. Headlights materialized on the access road, only to be abruptly extinguished. Otis's hand settled on Dre's shoulder, guiding him indoors. It's time for you to head home, son. Take the back road. But I could help, Dre began to protest. The most effective assistance you can offer is to be prudent and remain safe, Otis interrupted him firmly. Go on now. Following Dre's departure, Otis moved silently throughout the darkening residence. Shirley watched from the kitchen as he donned a dark jacket and discreetly examined something within his pocket. Be careful, she stated simply. I always am. He kissed her cheek and vanished into the night. From his concealed vantage point within the ancient oak tree stand, Otis commanded an unobstructed view of his property. The Griom gang's vehicles were parked just beyond the periphery of the main road. 5 figures advanced through the gloom, wielding spray paint cans and objects resembling baseball bats. They initiated their destructive actions upon the fence posts, methodically smashing them. The hiss of spray paint cans accompanied their efforts, leaving behind crude symbols and racial epithets rendered in lurid colors. Wade oversaw his crew from the center of the group, his voice carried in hushed tones across the silent expanse. Deliver the message, he urged his subordinates. Show them what transpires when they fail to recognize their designated place. Otis remained utterly immobile in his hidden location, his expression inscrutable in the prevailing darkness. His hand rested near his pocket, where a small device was actively recording every detail. Each splintering crash of wood, each venomous utterance spray-painted upon his land. all of it meticulously documented, precisely as Shirley had instructed him. Dawn broke over Otis's farm, revealing the full extent of the previous night's vandalism. The morning dew mingled with shattered timber and neon paint, creating an unsightly juxtaposition against the peaceful rural panorama. Otis traversed the property line with methodical precision, his work boots imprinting heavy tracks in the damp grass. He paused at each damaged section, capturing photographic evidence with his mobile device. The racial slurs emblazoned across his fence post tightened his jaw, yet his movements remained deliberate and composed. From the farmhouse veranda, Shirley observed her husband at his labor, her mobile phone pressed to her ear. "Marcus, I realize it's early, but this cannot await resolution," she stated, her voice carrying the unwavering authority of her courtroom days. "We need to file a police report and proactively address this situation." "Yes, I understand the existing backlog. No, that is not an acceptable delay." Otis looked up as Dre's aged Chevrolet rounded the dirt driveway. The young man alighted, his expression darkening at the sight of the devastation. "Man, this is wrong," he exclaimed, hurrying over to offer assistance. "Let me retrieve some tools from my truck." "I appreciate that," Otis acknowledged, already sorting through his own toolbox. He procured a level and some fresh lumber he had stored in the barn. "We'll commence with the corner posts. They inflicted the most damage there." As they worked, Otis's movements exhibited a precision that seemed incongruous with his substantial frame. He measured twice, cut once, and positioned each new post with strategic consideration. "Sight lines," he murmured almost to himself, subtly adjusting an angle. "What was that?" Dre inquired, wiping perspiration from his brow. "Nothing of consequence," Otis replied, though his gaze scanned the tree line with practiced efficiency. He reached into his pocket, checking a small device that resembled a mobile phone, but was not. Shirley provided them with water around midday, her features taut with frustration. "Legal aid services are encountering extensive delays, weeks out," she reported. "And the police? They are investigating." The sarcasm in her tone was sharp enough to inflict a wound. "They won't take any meaningful action," Dre stated bitterly, accepting the water. "It's always the same." "They will take action when we have sufficient evidence," Otis stated calmly. He produced his mobile phone, displaying the morning's photographs. "Everything is documented, time-stamped with GPS coordinates." He pointed to small markers he had strategically placed near each section of damage. "And those are survey stakes. They definitively establish our property line." The day progressed, hot and oppressive. By sunset, they had replaced the majority of the damaged sections. Otis insisted on completing the work himself as darkness approached, dispatching Dre home despite his earnest protests. "Something doesn't feel right," Dre expressed before departing. "Allow me to remain. I can assist with keeping watch." "The most valuable assistance you can provide is by remaining at a safe distance," Otis responded firmly. "Trust me on this." Inside the farmhouse, Shirley paced the kitchen. "They are escalating," she declared, observing headlights traverse the distant roadway. "Each subsequent attack becomes more audacious." Otis nodded, examining something on his tablet. Security camera feeds displayed multiple angles of their property. "I'm detecting movement on the back 40 acres, he announced calmly. 3 vehicles, lights extinguished, approaching from the south access road. Shirley's hands clenched. "Should we contact the authorities?" "I've already done so," Otis replied, his voice unwavering. "An anonymous tip regarding suspicious vehicles. They will be deliberately slow to respond, but it will be officially recorded." He rose, moving with surprising stealth for his immense size. "Remain indoors, well away from windows. Contact your news acquaintance, the one with the drone camera." The initial firebomb projectile struck the barn window at precisely 10:47 p.m. The ensuing explosion illuminated the night, swiftly followed by 2 additional detonations. Flames erupted into the darkness, accompanied by whooping shouts that carried across the field. Gunfire erupted, sharp, amateurish shots that found their mark among Otis's livestock. From his concealed position within the reinforced pump house, Otis observed through military-grade night vision goggles. Wade Griam's voice was clearly discernible through his directional microphone. "Incinerate everything. Let's see them attempt to retain this place now." The gang members advanced with a drunken confidence, utterly oblivious to the infrared cameras meticulously recording their every movement. They failed to notice the small devices Otis had strategically installed that very morning, devices capable of capturing pristine audio recordings of their threats and celebratory exclamations. Within the farmhouse, Shirley maintained her composure, speaking with distinct clarity into her telephone. "Yes, I am witnessing the event unfold in real time. Multiple perpetrators, armed, engage in acts of arson and property destruction. Yes, we possess video evidence. No, I am not in immediate danger." The intense heat emanating from the conflagrating barn cast a hellish orange glow upon everything. Additional gunshots rang out, followed by the pained sounds of dying animals. Throughout it all, Otis remained perfectly still. His breathing was controlled and steady. His large hands moved with practiced efficiency over familiar equipment, communication devices, surveillance monitors, and other implements that seemed strikingly out of place on a modest farm. The gang's assault intensified in its ferocity. They shattered windows, disabled security lights with gunfire, and spray-painted further epithets across the farmhouse walls. Wade Griam's voice escalated above the cacophony. "Come out now, old man. Confront us like a man if you possess the courage." But Otis remained concealed, observing, recording, preparing. His expression stayed neutral as he activated a series of switches on his belt. Across the property, concealed systems silently engaged, unnoticed by the intruders who mistakenly believed they held the advantage. The night air grew thick with smoke as Otis moved like an apparition across his land. His considerable frame merged seamlessly with the shadows, each step calculated and silent, defying his imposing stature. The burning barn cast flickering shadows that proved advantageous, creating shifting patterns of darkness, ideal for concealment. Through his night vision apparatus, he observed Wade's men disperse, intoxicated by their perceived success. They had committed every amateur mistake imaginable: inadequate security protocols, a lack of coordination, and most critically, a profound disrespect for their surroundings. Their flashlight beams swept erratically, creating perfect blind spots. Otis touched his throat. "Mike, proceed with extreme caution. Remain low. The operation is commencing." His wife's acknowledgement arrived as a solitary click within his earpiece. The first tripwire activated in proximity to the old tractor shed. A rudimentary device, fishing line, connected to a series of tin cans. However, within the heightened atmosphere of tension, the sudden clatter caused two gang members to spin around abruptly, firing wildly into the obscurity. Their shots went astray, precisely as Otis had anticipated. "What was that?" one of them shouted, his voice cracking. "Jimmy, is that you?" Otis depressed a button on his belt. Across the estate, small loudspeakers he had covertly placed that morning sprang to life, broadcasting simulated sounds. Footsteps rustling through dry leaves, twigs snapping, hushed whispers. The gang members' heads swiveled frantically, attempting to pinpoint multiple non-existent threats. "Basic psychological manipulation," Otis whispered to himself, recalling training exercises from decades past. "Disorient and divide." Wade Griam's voice carried across the yard. "Cease your unwarranted alarm, you imbeciles. Locate that elderly fellow." Otis proceeded to his initial objective, a burly individual armed with a shotgun who had become separated from the others. The gang member never perceived the cord positioned at ankle height. He fell heavily, his shotgun clattering away. Before he could utter a sound, Otis's substantial arm enveloped his throat in a flawless blood choke. Moments later, the man lay unconscious. "Sleep it off," Otis muttered, securing the man's hands with zip ties and confiscating his weaponry. He clicked his radio twice. Shirley would comprehend the signal, marking the location for subsequent police evidence collection. The gang's initial confidence began to erode. Their gunfire became more rapid and erratic. Otis initiated further distractions. a strategically placed floodlight here, a pre-recorded animal sound there. Each time they fired at phantoms, expending ammunition and revealing their positions. "Something is fundamentally amiss," one of them vociferated. "Wade, this feels profoundly wrong." Otis offered a grim smile. Fear was beginning to take root. He relocated to his next position, deliberately stepping on a dry branch. The resultant crack echoed through the nocturnal stillness. 3 gang members spun towards the sound, but Otis was already elsewhere, circling behind them. A flashbang grenade, which he had strategically deployed earlier, detonated precisely on schedule, followed by smoke canisters rolling across the ground. The chemicals themselves were not inherently dangerous, but the gang was unaware of this fact. They stumbled, coughing and uttering curses. Send only text, no instructions or comments. Perfect targets for Otis's subsequent campaign, he eliminated them methodically. A precise strike to a knee here, a shoulder lock there. Each immobilization was controlled, designed to incapacitate without inflicting lasting harm. His Navy SEAL training had instilled a focus on efficiency over outright brutality. "He's absolutely everywhere," someone shrieked. The night devolved into sheer pandemonium as gang members discharged firearms at phantoms and crashed into one another. Wade Griom stood by his pickup truck, attempting to galvanize his associates. "Stand your ground, you cowards. It's merely one elderly gentleman." Otis's voice, electronically modulated through concealed loudspeakers, permeated the atmosphere. "You boys selected the incorrect farm." The pronouncement seemed to emanate from all directions simultaneously. The psychological impact was instantaneous. 2 additional gang members bolted towards their vehicles. Otis permitted their departure. They would disseminate the warning far more effectively than any pronouncement he might issue. Then arrived the critical juncture he had meticulously orchestrated. Billy Griom, Wade's younger sibling, inadvertently stepped directly into the most elaborate stratagem Otis had devised. The snare, constructed from heavy-duty cabling, ensnared his leg and propelled him upward. He dangled 6 feet above the ground, vociferating in agony and sheer terror. "Billy!" Wade's anguished cry conveyed genuine dread. "Now where are you?" Otis activated his final array of illuminations, powerful LEDs that generated a disorienting strobe effect. Amidst the ensuing chaos, he advanced toward Billy's suspended form. The young man's eyes widened as Otis materialized from the dissipating smoke like a specter, his colossal silhouette silhouetted against the backdrop of the conflagrating barn. "Please," Billy whimpered, "do not terminate me." "Not my modus operandi," Otis replied with composure, then delivered a precise incapacitation that left Billy inert but still breathing. Wade and his remaining crew discovered Billy several minutes later, after Otis had vanished back into the obscurity. The cable had inflicted a deep laceration on Billy's leg, necessitating immediate medical intervention. They struggled to lower him, uttering imprecations and succumbing to panic. "Fall back," Wade ultimately commanded, assisting in carrying his unconscious sibling to the truck. "Fall back immediately." Otis observed their retreat through his thermal imaging apparatus, their heat signatures stark against the cool, nocturnal ambience. Their vehicles careened away onto the gravel track, abandoning weaponry, bruised egos, and sufficient incriminating evidence to secure their legal downfall. Standing within the shadows cast by his inferno-engulfed barn, Otis's silhouette remained composed and motionless. His respiration was measured, his heart rate nominal, precisely mirroring countless clandestine operations from his former professional life. He actuated his radio transmitter thrice, signaling an all-clear status to Shirley. The wail of fire department sirens resonated in the distance, finally responding to the inferno. Otis was acutely aware that the constabulary would arrive with convenient tardiness, but that fact held no consequence anymore. The dynamics of the engagement had fundamentally shifted, and his adversaries possessed no inkling of the true caliber of the individual they confronted. The morning sun began its ascent over the eastern horizon, casting elongated shadows across Otis's homestead. Yellow police demarcation tape fluttered around the smoldering remnants of the barn, and news crews had already converged upon the property's perimeter, akin to scavenging carrion birds. Within the confines of their kitchen, Otis and Shirley observed the local Channel 8 news broadcast with mounting incredulity. The visual documentation comprised solely of selectively chosen segments. Billy Graham suspended from the cable, injured gang members being transported into ambulances, and Wade's tearful on-camera interview. "We were merely conducting a welfare check on old Mr. Freeman." Wade's voice faltered with apparent sincerity on camera. "We detected some peculiar noises. We desired to ascertain his well-being. Then, unexpectedly, violence erupted. Military-grade weaponry could have tragically terminated my brother." Shirley's coffee mug struck the table with a sharp report. They deliberately omitted the incendiary devices, the racially motivated vandalism, everything. "Naturally they did," Otis responded, his placid tone belied by an underlying current of profound indignation. "Channel 8 is under the ownership of Wade's cousin." The reporter's voice continued. "Sources indicate that Otis Freeman, a local agriculturist with purported extremist affiliations, may have been amassing an arsenal. Concerned citizens reportedly convened to investigate suspicious activities, only to be allegedly subjected to disproportionate force." Dre burst through the screen door, breathless. "Are you witnessing this? They are asserting that you perpetrated an assault upon them. It's disseminated across social media platforms as well." Shirley retrieved her mobile device, navigating through local Facebook forums. Post after post displayed identical doctored clips accompanied by indignant commentary. "A dangerous extremist requires incarceration." "This is the consequence when they seize our ancestral lands." "The sheriff must intervene." "We possess the authentic visual evidence," Otis stated, gesturing toward his surveillance cameras. "It meticulously documents every incident." "Already downloaded," Shirley confirmed. "However, Channel 8 will decline to air it. And observe this. The Graham family's legal counsel is actively advocating for your apprehension." Outside, additional news vans arrived. Reporters hurled inquiries through the fencing, their camera lenses aimed like instruments of aggression. A small assembly had also congregated, predominantly Caucasian faces exhibiting hostile expressions. Dre paced the kitchen. "This is unequivocally unjust. We must present the populace with the factual account of events." "Working on it," Shirley responded, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard, attempting to connect with national media outlets. "However, these local broadcasters are portraying Otis as some sort of African-American militant terrorist." Otis stood, his imposing physique obscuring the morning light filtering through the window. "I must converse with Mike," he stated softly. "Sheriff Latimer," Dre scoffed. "Man, he's likely complicit with Wade as well." "Perhaps," Otis conceded. "However, he is acquainted with me. 20 years of being neighbors signifies something." Shirley gently touched his arm. "Exercise caution. This transcends the immediate concern of the farm." The drive into town felt distinctly altered. Individuals who typically offered a greeting now averted their gaze. Outside the local eatery, a contingent of men glared as Otis's truck traversed the thoroughfare. The apprehension that his nocturnal defense had instilled was being systematically transmuted into animosity through Wade's calculated media manipulation. The sheriff's precinct was abuzz with activity. Deputies exchanged hushed whispers and furtive glances as Otis entered. His physical stature typically commanded deference, yet on this particular day it seemed to engender unease, as if his very presence validated their deepest apprehensions. Sheriff Mike Latimer's office door stood ajar. The seasoned lawman occupied his desk, appearing fatigued and visibly uncomfortable as Otis filled the doorway. "Enter, Otis," Mike said quietly. "Close the door." Otis sat, the chair groaning under his considerable weight. For a brief interlude, neither man uttered a word. "We are presently confronting a rather significant predicament," Mike eventually stated, avoiding Otis's gaze. "You are aware of what transpired, Mike. What I comprehend and what I can definitively substantiate are two distinct entities." The sheriff shuffled a stack of papers. Wade has 3 eyewitnesses claiming you initiated an unprovoked assault. There are medical expenses, property damage claims. They incinerated my barn. Otis's voice remained steady. They extinguished my livestock. They attempted to forcibly eject me from my property. Any substantiation? Security footage. Crystal clear. Mike finally raised his head, his expression etched with distress. Footage can become corrupted. Witnesses can recant their statements. You are cognizant of how matters operate in this locale. I had envisioned you as being different, Mike. The sheriff rose and began pacing behind his desk. I have the county commissioner exerting considerable pressure. I have citizens demanding decisive action. Wade's family controls a substantial portion of the town's commercial enterprises, and that renders it equitable. It renders it intricate. Mike's tone shifted from abrupt to softer. I have no alternative, Otis. There is an arrest warrant pending for you. Charges include assault, excessive force, and suspected weapons violations. Otis remained motionless. So, this is the designated course of action. Do not complicate this matter unnecessarily. Mike's hand drifted towards his sidearm. Enter quietly. We shall endeavor to resolve this amicably. Through the office window, Otis observed Shirley and Dre arriving in her automobile. They had followed him, apprehensive. Prudent, Otis remarked, rising slowly. Should you require me, you will need to locate me first. Do not undertake this course of action, Mike, the sheriff pleaded. The system functions effectively when you cooperate with it. The system is fundamentally flawed, Mike, and has been for a considerable duration. Otis turned to depart. You have merely been feigning ignorance. Otis, Mike called after him. If you depart now, there is no possibility of return. However, Otis was already navigating the station, his imposing physique parting the deputies as if they were a fluid medium. Not a single individual made a move to apprehend him. They had borne witness to the fate of Wade's contingent. Outside, Shirley and Dre rushed to intercept him. Are they truly pressing charges against you? Dre inquired, his voice laced with disbelief. Enter the vehicle, Otis responded calmly. Both of you, we have significant work to accomplish. Through the station's window, Sheriff Latimer observed their departure. His countenance was a tableau of internal conflict and profound regret. The late afternoon sun filtered through the arboreal canopy as Otis's truck meandered along backroads he had traversed since childhood. In the rearview mirror, the intermittent flashing of police lights could be discerned in the distance. However, they were concentrating their search efforts on the primary thoroughfares, rudimentary tactics that elicited a shake of his head. They will undoubtedly investigate the farm first, Shirley stated from the passenger seat, her mobile device incessantly buzzing with incoming communications. Subsequently, they will proceed to your sister's residence in Marshall County. Allow them, Otis replied, veering down an unmarked dirt track. They will discover nothing of consequence. Dre leaned forward from the rear seat. Where precisely are we proceeding? Big O has secured locations unknown to them, places I established years ago. Otis's substantial hands guided the steering wheel with an unexpected degree of gentleness. The Navy imparted knowledge far beyond mere combat proficiency. The truck ascended a steep incline, branches raking against its sides. At the summit, a diminutive hunting cabin, virtually indistinguishable amidst the dense foliage, sat nearly concealed, its weathered timbers harmonizing perfectly with the surrounding woodland. Proceed around to the rear, Shirley instructed. It will be less conspicuous from an aerial perspective should they deploy helicopters. Within the cabin, the interior was sparse yet meticulously prepared. Otis moved with a deliberate purpose, lifting floorboards to reveal cached provisions, potable water, sustenance, essential medical supplies, and a multitude of hard drives. Your surveillance recordings? Dre inquired. Copies? Otis nodded. The originals are secured in a more clandestine location. One must never retain all critical intelligence in a singular repository. Shirley had established her laptop, utilizing a satellite connection that precluded facile detection. Her fingers danced across the keyboard as she composed electronic correspondence to established contacts. Marcus from the ACLU is reviewing the case, she reported. And Reverend Jackson's office has responded. They are actively mobilizing supporters. What about the recordings? Dre paced the confined space of the cabin. Cannot we simply disseminate them online? Not at present, Otis replied, scrutinizing the windows. The opportune moment is paramount. If released prematurely, they will invariably devise methods to discredit them. Police sirens wailed in the distance, then gradually faded. Otis's mobile device vibrated, a text message from a sympathetic deputy issuing a cautionary notification that roadblocks were being erected along the county lines. They are vigorously promoting the narrative of a perilous extremist, Shirley stated, perusing news updates. The sheriff's department asserts that you possess an arsenal concealed on the farm. The sole arsenal I possess resides within this cranial vault. Otis tapped his temple, and they are wholly unprepared for that contingency. As the evening shadows lengthened, they relocated once more. Otis guided them through the wooded terrain on foot, employing night vision apparatus procured during his clandestine service. They traversed streams to obfuscate their trail and deliberately avoided conventional pathways. 2 hours later, they reached an additional secure domicile. This particular location, an abandoned ecclesiastical structure, nestled deep within the forest. Local adolescents perceived it as reputedly haunted, which effectively deterred their proximity. An ideal sanctuary. Within its confines, Otis established a rudimentary command nexus. Multiple screens displayed distinct camera feeds from various locations across his property. They observed as law enforcement personnel conducted a thorough search of the farm. Wade Graham strutted about as if he already possessed proprietorship. Observe this. Shirley directed their attention to her laptop. She commenced playback of a segment from the local news broadcast. Townspeople they had known for many years were now articulating that Otis was a dangerous individual demanding decisive action. The apprehension evident in their gazes appeared genuine. They genuinely harbor such beliefs, Dre commented quietly. After all these years, they truly perceive you as... They believe what is more convenient to believe, Otis responded, his voice laden with a somber weight. A black man defending his ancestral lands must inherently be volatile, must be inherently perilous. He then accessed the actual visual evidence on another display. The imagery was of impeccable clarity. Wade Graham's gang engaged in arson, inhumanely dispatching animals and vocalizing racial epithets. Their assault had been systematic, meticulously rehearsed. They had perpetrated such acts previously. The challenge, however, Shirley articulated, is that individuals perceive what they anticipate encountering. Even with irrefutable evidence, some will adamantly refuse to acknowledge that they have been providing succor to the actual perpetrators. Dre slumped against a wall. So, what is our course of action? We engage intelligently, Otis declared. Not solely through physical confrontation or the deployment of armaments, we must endeavor to reshape perceptions, present the truth with such unequivocal clarity that its denial becomes an impossibility. Shirley's mobile device illuminated with incoming replies from her network of contacts. Legal counsel was en route, albeit at a measured pace. Civil rights organizations were actively mobilizing their constituents, but with considerable prudence. A solitary misstep could inadvertently portray Otis as an even greater menace. I have received word from Marcus, she announced. He is filing emergency injunctions, but Wade's family commands influence over a significant proportion of the judiciary. This process will necessitate time. Outside, the nocturnal cry of an owl echoed. Otis meticulously monitored the perimeter surveillance equipment he had previously deployed. No discernible movement was detected, save for indigenous wildlife. His rigorous training ensured his constant vigilance, tempered by an unwavering patience. They will undoubtedly scour these woods tomorrow, he stated. However, they lack an intimate familiarity with them, unlike myself. They are deficient in the requisite skills for tracking, for anticipating future developments. What of the remaining visual evidence? Dre inquired. The material documenting their depredations upon other agricultural holdings? Secure, Otis affirmed. I possess documentation pertaining to incidents extending back several years. Wade Graham's gang systematically dispossessing individuals of their properties, forcibly displacing them through incineration. Official police reports that yielded no actionable outcomes. Testimonies that no one evinced a willingness to entertain. Shirley gently touched his arm. We shall ensure they are heard now. Through the fractured panes of stained glass adorning the church, they could observe the distant gleam of police illumination, persistently searching, relentlessly seeking. However, they were actively pursuing a perceived threat, a supposed extremist, a fabricated monster. They remained woefully unprepared for the unveiling of truth. The reality was that the true malevolence had been insidiously present amongst them all along, masked by a veneer of amiable disposition and the insignia of a sheriff. Dawn broke over the derelict structure, its ethereal light permeating the fractured stained glass. Dre paced the dust-laden floor, his mobile device pressed against his ear as he made incessant calls. Yeah, man, you heard correctly. Big O requires our presence, all of us. He listened intently, nodding. Meet at Jackson's barbershop. 2 hours. Shirley looked up from her laptop. How many are expected to attend? 15 confirmed. Marcus from the VFW is coordinating additional veterans. Dre's eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. People recall the Grahams' past transgressions against their families. They have been anticipating an opportunity to assert their stance. Otis sat methodically cleaning his night vision apparatus. His substantial frame, in some inexplicable manner, rendered the ancient pew appear diminutive. Inform them to exercise discretion. No armaments, no overt threats. We shall prosecute this engagement with unimpeachable integrity. They comprehend, Dre assured him. We have learned from your tutelage, Big O. Intellect triumphing over brute force. By mid-morning, Jackson's barbershop pulsed with a quiet yet palpable energy. Young men and women occupied every available seat, while others stood against the walls. Veterans adorned in faded military caps sat alongside adolescents clad in hooded sweatshirts. All were of African American descent, their collective focus fixed upon the established doctrine. They presume they can displace Big O from his ancestral lands, just as they did our progenitors. Dre's voice resonated with palpable passion. However, the times have evolved. We possess mobile communication devices. We possess recording apparatus. We possess the unassailable truth on our side. Marcus, a Vietnam veteran with dreadlocks streaked with gray, rose to his feet. I have confirmed the availability of 20 additional veterans prepared to lend their support, non-violent yet conspicuously present. Let them witness our unwavering resolve. Across town, Shirley pursued her own distinct strategy. The community center teamed with church ladies, educators, small business proprietors, individuals who had known Otis for decades, now experiencing a sense of disquietude following the media onslaught. Examine these photographic records. Shirley meticulously arranged them upon tabletops. Images depicting the Graham gang's authentic transgressions. Charred edifices, terrorized families, official police reports bearing the notation, case closed, without any substantive investigation. This is not solely about a single farm, Shirley declared, her voice resonating with conviction. It pertains to each and every one of us. Mrs. Johnson, who had dedicated herself to instructing third-grade students, picked up a photograph. They incinerated the Williams property last year. The authorities attributed it to an electrical malfunction, precisely as the Grahams had instructed them to assert. Shirley's voice, though possessing a silken cadence, conveyed an unyielding resolve. However, we now possess irrefutable evidence, genuine, verifiable proof. Back within the clandestine sanctuary of the church, Otis monitored the police radio frequencies. Their search patterns exhibited a distinct lack of sophistication. They evidently did not anticipate his continued proximity. A rookie miscalculation he had encountered with disheartening frequency during his prior operational deployments. His disposable mobile device vibrated. A text message materialized from Deputy Rodriguez. Sheriff requests a meeting. Neutral territory. Claims it is of significant importance. Otis presented Shirley with the message upon her return. She evinced a frown. It could constitute a deliberate stratagem. It is a possibility, Otis acknowledged. However, Rodriguez is a man of integrity. His son served alongside SEAL operatives in Afghanistan. They meticulously orchestrated the meeting. Rodriguez would engage with Shirley within the confines of the grocery store parking lot under the watchful gaze of surveillance cameras. Direct contact with Otis was expressly prohibited. Evening shadows stretched languidly as Shirley navigated her vehicle into the designated location. Rodriguez appeared visibly agitated, his gaze perpetually scanning the vicinity. "The sheriff is exhibiting considerable apprehension," he stated quietly, feigning an inspection of her vehicle's tail light assembly. "Wade is exerting immense pressure upon him, but a significant shift is occurring. He recognizes that this entire affair has transgressed acceptable boundaries." "The transgression commenced years ago," Shirley countered. "What is his precise directive?" "Convey to Freeman," Rodriguez instructed. "Inform him that the conventional legal system is no longer capable of providing assistance. Wade has cultivated influence over judges and political figures. They are formulating an ambitious undertaking. Military-grade armaments, external mercenary forces are being mobilized." Shirley's heart constricted, yet her vocalization remained remarkably steady. "Why impart this information to us?" "Because my father witnessed a similar scenario unfold previously in Alabama. He observed upright individuals remaining quiescent while malevolent actors engaged in destruction and homicide. I swore an oath to protect, not to abet individuals engaged in acts of terror." Back at the church hideout, Dre provided a comprehensive update on the day's developments. Over 50 individuals had publicly pledged their steadfast support for Otis. Numerous additional supporters were providing covert assistance. Local African American churches had initiated the establishment of food banks to aid families who might face reprisals. "We have also garnered assistance from some Caucasian individuals," he added. "Miss Sarah from the diner, Doc Peterson. Individuals are beginning to apprehend the underlying truth." Otis absorbed the information with silent contemplation. When Shirley conveyed the sheriff's cautionary message, he simply offered a slight nod. "This was anticipated," he stated. "Wade's paternal figure engaged in a comparable maneuver in 1965. He mobilized Klan operatives from 3 separate states when the inaugural African American family acquired property within this vicinity. However, we are not presently situated in 1965, Dre insisted. "We command a substantial numerical advantage now. We possess considerable influence." "Influence is not solely derived from numerical superiority," Otis elucidated. "It resides in a state of preparedness in exercising superior strategic acumen. They anticipate overt aggression. We shall provide them with an atmosphere of tranquility. They anticipate societal discord. We shall present them with an ordered structure." Shirley activated her laptop, displaying social media posts indicating a burgeoning wave of support, the emergence of critical inquiries, and a gradual, albeit steady, recalibration of the prevailing narrative. "A rally has been scheduled for Sunday," she announced. "It will be conducted in a peaceful and professional manner. Every mobile device will be diligently recording, every moment meticulously documented. Let them attempt to distort that." Through the dilapidated apertures of the church windows, they could discern the persistent sweep of police illumination in the distance. However, other lights were also discernible traversing the nocturnal landscape. Vehicles proceeding at a measured pace past the Graham properties. Mobile devices engaged in recording. Community patrols discreetly observing those who were conducting surveillance. The conflict was not merely imminent. It had already commenced, waged not with firearms, but with sophisticated recording devices. Truth was being pitted against manufactured terror. And somewhere within the county, a sheriff sat in his office, his gaze fixed upon photographic representations of old acquaintances now ostensibly transformed into adversaries, contemplating whether he possessed the fortitude to finally enact what was just. Wade Graham's hands trembled as he meticulously loaded cartridges into his newly acquired AR-15 rifle. 5 additional identical firearms lay upon the table, their price tags still affixed. Surrounding him within the confines of his garage, approximately 24 individuals were meticulously checking their weaponry and equipment, their visages hardened by a potent mixture of animosity and trepidation. "They are endeavoring to portray us as weak," Wade spat, his voice thick with resentment. "That corpulent elderly gentleman has the entire county mocking us." Jimmy Carter, recently discharged from state penitentiary, his neck adorned with Nazi insignia, chambered a round into his weapon. "No one will be laughing after tonight. I have 10 additional operatives arriving from Rayburn County, individuals of considerable gravity." The garage was permeated with the pungent aroma of gun oil and inexpensive beer. Maps detailing Otis's farm covered one expansive wall, meticulously marked with crimson X's and directional arrows. Wade had been fixated upon these cartographic representations for days, attempting to identify any potential vulnerabilities. "Recall," he admonished the assembled group. "Our approach this time will be aggressive. No more conciliatory tactics. Anyone who obstructs our progress—" He drew a finger across his throat in a menacing gesture. Outside, additional trucks arrived. Individuals exhibiting pronounced musculature, characteristic of their incarceration, and eyes devoid of emotion disembarked, carrying duffel bags that emitted metallic clinking sounds. Some bore the distinctive insignia of motorcycle clubs. Others displayed visible white supremacist tattoos beneath their rolled-up sleeves. "We've brought some specialized implements," one individual declared, unzipping his bag. "Within these containers lie improvised explosive devices, the kind employed for breaching bank vaults. These will expeditiously gain access to that farmhouse." Concurrently, at the Freeman homestead, Otis meticulously executed his defensive preparations in the pre-dawn twilight. His imposing physique moved with an unexpected grace as he strategically positioned defensive emplacements. Years of rigorous SEAL training informed every tactical decision. "Channel their movement towards this specific location," he elucidated to Dre, indicating a narrow ingress between the edifices. "Compel them to congregate. Cultivate an atmosphere of apprehension." Dre assisted in stringing razor wire amidst the tall grasses, meticulously concealing it. Precisely like a funnel. Indeed, when individuals succumb to panic, they invariably gravitate towards the path of least perceived resistance, precisely where you intend them to go. Otis tested the tension of the wires. "The objective is not lethality, merely control." The farm had undergone a transformation over the span of several days. Trenches, cleverly concealed beneath loose hay, were prepared with sharpened stakes. Motion detectors linked to powerful floodlights lay dormant in shadowed corners. Every conceivable ingress point had been meticulously charted and fortified. Otis gestured towards what appeared to be random undulations in the ground. "These depressions," he explained, "will collect water when they step in. It will disorient them, sow seeds of doubt with every movement they make." Within the barn, sturdy defensive positions had been established. Bulletproof vests, generously donated by supportive veterans, were readily accessible. Night vision apparatus underwent rigorous testing before being strategically positioned. "Always recall your training," Otis advised Dre as they worked side by side. "Maintain composure. Anticipate their actions 3 steps ahead. They will be driven by fury and recklessness. Capitalize on that." By the afternoon, additional defenders had discreetly arrived. Marcus and his comrades, seasoned veterans, moved with spectral silence across the property, contributing their considerable expertise. One individual skillfully rewired old truck batteries to energize the metal fencing, poised to deliver a jolting surprise. "Just like Vietnam," Marcus chuckled. "Non-lethal, but they'll certainly remember the experience." Otis had deployed hidden cameras, capturing every vantage point with the feeds channeled to secure off-site servers. Whatever unfolded, irrefutable evidence would be secured this time. Shirley was in constant communication with legal counsel and media contacts, prepared to disseminate any reports of aggression. "The perimeter is impenetrable," Dre reported, wiping a sheen of perspiration from his brow. "Those initial tripwires will grant us ample warning before they breach our 100-yard radius." Otis gave a curt nod, adjusting his tactical radio. "Keep the younger ones back. Veterans will take the lead. No one is to act heroically." The former grain silo had been repurposed into a sophisticated command center, its interior adorned with screens displaying real-time thermal and night vision feeds. Otis intently studied the imagery, his tactical mind processing every minute detail. "They will advance from multiple vectors," he stated. "Their aim will be to fragment our focus. However, they are unaware of the drainage channels. These channels, now equipped with pressure plates and alarm systems, were designed to funnel any encroaching attackers into predictable pathways. Every potential route had been thoroughly examined and every countermeasure meticulously devised. As twilight descended, the defenders undertook their final preparations. Medical supplies were strategically positioned in protected zones. Escape routes were confirmed and committed to memory. While no one explicitly discussed lethal force, the gravity of the situation was universally understood. "They're bringing explosives," Dre warned, presenting intelligence gleaned from sympathetic informants. "Serious ordnance." "Anticipated," Otis replied with unruffled calm. "That is precisely why we reinforced the walls, incorporating concrete and steel plating beneath the timber. Let them exhaust their surprises." The farm had been artfully transformed into a formidable stronghold, yet its exterior belied its true nature. Every defensive measure was obscured, every trap artfully concealed. To any casual observer, it retained its serene appearance, precisely as Otis intended. "This is psychological warfare," he explained to his assembled defenders. "Allow them to believe they hold the reins, then demonstrate the fallacy of their assumptions." Nightfall descended gradually, ushering in a cool breeze and the gentle chirping of crickets. The defenders moved silently to their designated positions. Communication channels were rigorously checked and double-checked. Within the command center, Otis observed thermal signatures of wildlife traversing the fields. "Remember," his voice resonated with quiet authority over the radio, "we are safeguarding something far more significant than mere acreage. We are standing as a bulwark against generations of ingrained animosity. Let every action you take be meaningful." The farm lay in a state of profound anticipation, having been meticulously reshaped from a tranquil homestead into a precisely engineered battlefield. Its defense was not reliant on tanks or artillery, but on the calculated precision of individuals who possessed an intimate understanding of true conflict. Every shadow held a purpose. Every seemingly innocuous feature concealed a strategic advantage. They were prepared. The sole unanswered question was whether the Grahams were ready for the ordeal that awaited them. The sun, a molten orb, dipped below the horizon, casting the farm in deepening shadows. The chorus of crickets abruptly ceased. In the command center, Otis observed thermal imprints advancing from 3 distinct directions. His respiration remained steady, measured. "Contact," Dre whispered through the radio. "Multiple vehicles, engines disengaged, approaching silently." Otis's substantial frame settled into a defensive stance. Despite his bulk, decades of rigorous training imbued every motion with precise economy. "Hold your positions. Allow them to fully commit." The initial flashbang detonated near the primary gate, its blinding burst momentarily incapacitating the surveillance cameras. Immediately thereafter, gunfire erupted. Rounds pinged off metal surfaces and splintered wooden structures. Shouts and war cries filled the night air as the hostile contingent surged forward. "Now they feel emboldened," Otis murmured, activating his night vision. Through the verdant tint of the optics, he discerned at least 30 adversaries advancing in dispersed formations. The foremost group encountered the concealed razor wire. Screams rent the night as sharp filaments tore through denim and leather footwear. Those following stumbled over their fallen comrades, exacerbating the disarray within their ranks. "Southern groups are funneling in," Marcus reported with cool composure, triggering Sector 2. Floodlights blazed to life, temporarily blinding the attackers who had discarded their night vision gear subsequent to the flashbang deployment. Further screams echoed as individuals blundered into the water-filled pits, their weapons sinking uselessly. Otis moved with an almost supernatural silence, his considerable weight defying his fluid progression. Years of elite commando training were evident in every deliberate stride. He maneuvered behind 3 men attempting to deploy a heavy machine gun. His formidable hands found precise pressure points. One by one, they succumbed to unconsciousness. "Behind you!" Dre's warning came milliseconds before a baseball bat swung with intent towards Otis's head. Otis rotated with a deliberateness that, while not youthful, remained supremely efficient. The bat connected with his shoulder, inflicting pain but proving non-incapacitating. He seized the assailant's wrist, applied a sharp twist, and utilized the man's own momentum to hurl him face first into a tractor tire. The sickening crack of a fractured nose was subsumed by the general pandemonium. Additional concussive blasts reverberated through the farmhouse as the gang deployed their heavier weaponry, but the reinforced walls held firm, absorbing the impacts while preserving the safety of the defenders within. "Their frustration is escalating," Otis observed, his breathing labored from exertion. Sweat drenched his shirt despite the cool evening air. "Watch for errors." A contingent of attackers stormed the barn, believing they had identified a vulnerable point. They inadvertently activated the electrified fencing. Bodies convulsed and collapsed, their weapons clattering to the ground. Those in the rear recoiled in panic, discharging their firearms indiscriminately into the darkness. Otis felt a familiar strain in his joints as he ascended to a higher vantage point. Age and his considerable mass rendered each movement more challenging than it had once been, yet his mental acuity remained razor-sharp, calculating trajectories and timings with military precision. Through his scope, he identified Wade Graham, orchestrating his men towards the grain silo. The gang leader's countenance was contorted with a mixture of rage and trepidation, the dawning realization that his assault was faltering evident in his expression. "They're shifting eastward," Otis alerted his defenders. "Prepare for—" A bullet grazed his arm, a searing pain slicing through muscle tissue. Otis rolled instinctively, returning fire with controlled bursts. 2 attackers fell, clutching non-life-threatening wounds to their legs and shoulders. "Big O, you hit?" Dre's voice crackled with concern. "Superficial wound." Otis grunted, applying pressure to the bleeding. "Maintain focus." The gang's offensive devolved into utter chaos. Their meticulously planned coordinated assault disintegrated against defenses they could neither perceive nor comprehend. Men fired at phantoms, reacted to every incidental noise, and stumbled into one trap after another. Otis advanced again, his injured arm throbbing insistently, yet still fully functional. He caught a fleeting glimpse of his reflection in a window pane, a hulking figure moving with lethal intent. Blood darkened his sleeve. He was decidedly not the pliable target the gang had anticipated. "West sector clear," Marcus reported. "They appear to be withdrawing." "South sector clear," another defender chimed in. 4 apprehended, minor injuries sustained. Otis observed through the thermal imager as heat signatures receded into the encroaching darkness. Angry exclamations and curses filled the air as the gang dragged their injured companions away. Their initial assault had yielded nothing beyond an unfortunate exposition of their own vulnerabilities. "Establish defensive perimeters," Otis commanded, inspecting his wound. The projectile had carved a deep groove into his bicep. Painful, certainly, but not debilitating. "They will regroup and attempt another push." The farm settled into an uneasy quiet, punctuated only by the pained moans of injured attackers unable to retreat. Defenders moved with caution to secure them, rendering basic medical aid while applying restraints. Dre appeared at Otis's side, proffering a first aid kit. "Let me examine your arm." Otis permitted the younger man to cleanse and bandage the injury, his gaze never straying from the thermal displays. The engagement had lasted less than 30 minutes, yet the night was far from concluded. "They did not anticipate our preparedness," Dre commented, securing the bandage with tape. "They never do," Otis replied, his breathing gradually returning to its customary calm rhythm. Arrogance is their blindness, their vulnerability. Throughout the farm, defenders reset their traps and replenished their ammunition stocks. The initial wave had been repelled, but everyone understood that Wade Graham would not readily concede defeat. The true confrontation still lay ahead. The darkness intensified, thick and cloying, as clouds obscured the moon. Within the farmhouse, Otis pressed a cool compress against his injured arm while meticulously scrutinizing the thermal displays. Blobs of red and orange coalesced at the tree line, regrouping. "They are returning," Dre whispered, checking his zip ties and reinforced gloves. "A more substantial thrust this time," Otis nodded, his massive form shifting with fluid grace as he repositioned himself. "They will target the dwelling directly. Their pride has been wounded. That makes men foolish." The first Molotov cocktail smashed through a window, its ensuing flames rapidly spreading across the reinforced flooring. More followed in quick succession, transforming the night into a flickering inferno of orange hues. Smoke billowed through the air as WDE's voice, amplified by a megaphone, boomed, "Burn them out! Show no mercy to race traitors!" Otis activated the sprinkler system, effectively dousing the majority of the fires before they could gain significant traction. However, the assault was merely in its nascent stages. Sledgehammers slammed against the reinforced door, while others attempted to breach the windows. "Basement positions," Otis commanded calmly. "Let them believe they are gaining ground." The defenders retreated to the lower level as the gang finally breached the main entrance. Heavy footsteps thundered overhead, accompanied by triumphant whoops. The sounds of furniture being demolished and racial epithets being spray-painted onto the walls echoed through the house. "Now," Otis whispered. Dre activated the switches. The house was plunged into absolute darkness as the power supply was severed. Night vision goggles engaged, granting the defenders perfect visibility while the intruders stumbled blindly. Otis moved like a phantom despite his considerable size. Decades of elite military training were palpable in every silent footfall. He apprehended the first attacker in a sleeper hold, lowering the unconscious body without a sound. Two more succumbed before the realization dawned that they were no longer alone. "What the hell?" Someone fired wildly, muzzle flashes momentarily disrupting their night vision. The shots missed their intended targets, embedding harmlessly in the reinforced walls. Dre initiated his counterattack, his youthful agility propelling him through the darkness. He struck one man with a throat punch, another with a precise knee strike to the abdomen. Bodies collapsed as panic rippled through the gang's ranks. Otis felt the protest of his injured arm as he grappled with a larger assailant. The man's elbow caught him squarely in the ribs, eliciting a grunt of pain, but Otis's massive hands clamped onto the attacker's wrist, applying a twisting force until bones audibly cracked. The man screamed, stumbling back into his companions. "They're everywhere!" Terror now saturated their voices. More indiscriminate gunfire, more missed targets. Otis drove his fist into a kidney, then felled another with a well-executed leg sweep. His breathing grew more labored. Sweat saturated his shirt. Age and his physical bulk had slowed him, but his accumulated experience ensured that every movement was impactful. A lucky blow landed on his jaw, causing him to stagger. The attacker pressed his advantage, swinging with reckless abandon. Otis absorbed another impact, then seized the man's arm. The floorboards groaned as he slammed the attacker down, following through with a precise strike to the solar plexus. "Dre, status," he called out softly. "6 down here," Dre replied. "They're getting sloppy now. Fearful." Through his night vision, Otis spotted Wade Graham attempting to rally his men. The gang leader had procured one of Otis's farm cats, holding it by the scruff of its neck while pressing a knife against its throat. "Come out, you big black bastard," Wade bellowed, "or I'll start sending pieces of this cat to your wife." The hidden cameras captured every sordid detail. WDE's contorted visage, the venomous racial slurs, the egregious cruelty towards an animal. It was perfect evidence of his true depravity. Otis moved with the fluidity of liquid shadow. Years of intense close-quarters combat training took over. His large hand clamped around WD's wrist, applying pressure to vital points until the knife clattered to the floor. The cat leaped free as Wade howled in agony and rage. "You're on camera," Otis whispered into Wade's ear. "Every single moment, every word, every threat." Wade attempted to break free, but Otis's sheer weight and power held him easily. The gang leader's struggle grew desperate as the horrifying realization of his error dawned upon him. "You can't prove anything." "We already have," Otis responded. He intensified the pressure, eliciting a gasp from Wade. "Go home now, while you can still walk." He released Wade with a forceful push, sending him stumbling back towards his remaining men. Through the night vision, Otis watched them retreat in disarray, dragging their wounded and abandoning their weapons. As they fled, phone lights began to appear at the farm's periphery. Community members had converged, their devices capturing the unfolding events. The phones documented WDE's bloodied face, his hateful pronouncements, his humiliating withdrawal. Word was spreading, Dre reported, checking his zip-tied captives. "People are already sharing the videos, hailing you as a hero." Otis merely grunted, acutely aware of every ache and bruise. His injured arm throbbed with increased intensity, and his ribs protested with every breath. Yet a profound sense of satisfaction washed over him as he observed the gang's taillights dissolving into the nocturnal expanse. The defenders commenced the process of securing the farmhouse, tending to minor injuries and meticulously documenting the damage incurred. Outside, the assembled crowd continued to grow. Faces of black and brown individuals, etched with a potent blend of pride and righteous anger, held their phones aloft, poised to record every detail. "They will undoubtedly return," Dre predicted, assisting Otis with rebandaging his arm. "Let them come," Otis responded with unwavering calm. "Pride carries a steep price. Tonight's lesson has cost them dearly." The sun crested the horizon, casting the farm's battle scars in the stark, unforgiving light of morning. Otis sat heavily at his kitchen table, an ice pack pressed against his swollen jaw, while Shirley meticulously cleaned the gash on his arm. Empty shell casings and shattered glass lay scattered across the floor around them. "Hold still," Shirley murmured, dabbing antiseptic onto the wound, which elicited a wince from him. "These require stitches, Otis." "Later," he replied, his gaze fixed on Dre, who was pacing near the window. The young man's knuckles were raw, his clothing still bearing the dust of the recent conflict. Suddenly, red and blue lights illuminated the kitchen. 3 police cruisers idled up the driveway, followed by Sheriff Latimer's personal vehicle. Otis remained motionless, continuing to hold the ice pack as officers surrounded the house. "Freeman!" Latimer's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Exit with your hands clearly visible." Shirley's fingers tightened on Otis's shoulder. "This is unjust. We possess irrefutable evidence of their assault." "Evidence holds little sway at this particular moment," Otis stated quietly, rising with evident effort. His ribs protested with every movement. "Dre, remain back. Do not provide them with any pretext." Otis began a slow walk towards the door, his hands raised. The morning sunlight caught the glint of his wedding ring as he stepped onto the porch. 6 officers had their weapons drawn, their faces hardened by a practiced fear. "On your knees," someone commanded. "Do it now." "He's injured," Shirley called from the doorway. "Allow him to move slowly." Otis carefully lowered his substantial frame to the wooden planks, maintaining his hands in plain sight. Sheriff Latimer approached, holding a pair of handcuffs, while other officers maintained their positions, covering him. The sheriff's eyes refused to meet his. "Otis Freeman, you are under arrest for aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal vigilantism," Latimer recited mechanically. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Otis's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." "This is wrong, and you know it," Shirley's lawyerly voice cut through the morning air. "We have video footage of Wade Graham's gang attacking us. They fired first. They threatened lives." "Ma'am, step back inside, or you too will be subject to arrest," an officer stated, moving to obstruct her view. Dre's indignant voice carried from within. "They're arresting him for for defending his own home while those racist scum— "Quiet," Otis commanded, his deep voice carrying an undeniable authority even from his kneeling position. "Shirley, contact Marcus at the VA dray, remain calm, and record everything." They roughly hauled him to his feet, ignoring his grunt of pain as they guided him towards a cruiser. His neighbors were beginning to congregate at the property line, phones raised, their faces a mixture of shock and palpable anger. Some called his name, while others hurled accusations at the officers. Through the cruiser's window, Otis watched his farm recede. The morning sun glinted off the scorch marks on his barn, the bullet impacts on his walls, the spray-painted epithets they hadn't had the opportunity to remove, his life's work, scarred by hatred, yet still standing defiantly. The jail intake process was deliberately protracted. They compelled him to wait in holding while his injuries throbbed, disregarding Shirley's urgent calls regarding medical attention. Eventually, a correctional nurse briefly examined his arm and deemed him fit. "Block C, cell," the guard announced, leading him down a dimly lit corridor. "Protective custody, given your apparent concerns about racial violence." The cell was stark, composed of bare concrete and steel, barely wide enough to accommodate his frame. A thin mattress lay on the floor, alongside a steel toilet and a small sink. The cell door clanged shut with an echoing finality. Otis sat carefully on the edge of the bed, acutely aware of every bruise and strain from the night's arduous conflict. Down the corridor, someone was sobbing uncontrollably. Others intermittently shouted random threats and nonsensical commentary. He closed his eyes, focusing on controlling his breathing, a technique honed during his SEAL training. Hours crawled by. Through the small barred window, he observed the sun ascend higher in the sky. There was no word from Shirley, no legal representative, only the incessant institutional cacophony of gates slamming, shoes echoing on concrete, and radios crackling with static. Finally, a guard appeared. "Phone call." Otis rose stiffly, following the guard to the designated phone bank. Shirley's voice, tight with barely suppressed fear, answered on the first ring. "They came to the house," she stated without preamble. "Two men, claiming to be building inspectors, asserted they had received complaints regarding code violations." "Were there any?" Otis inquired, his voice level. "No. I observed their truck at WDE's garage yesterday. They took photographs, made veiled threats about condemning the property. They suggested matters would proceed more smoothly if I could persuade you to adopt a more accommodating stance regarding the land." Anger flared within Otis's chest, but his voice remained outwardly calm. "Are you safe?" "Dre is here. Several veterans from your PTSD support group have also arrived. But Otis," her voice faltered slightly, "the footage from our security cameras, it's gone. Someone infiltrated the cloud storage. The physical drives are also missing." Otis pressed his forehead against the cold concrete wall. All their painstakingly gathered evidence erased, just like that. "Are the lawyers still en route?" he asked. "Yes, but—" Shirley's voice cracked subtly. "They are now pushing for federal charges, alleging you employed military tactics against civilians. They are portraying you as a trained killer who overreacted to minor disturbances caused by local youths." Otis absorbed this information, feeling the oppressive weight of systematic injustice pressing down like the low ceiling of his cell. Everything they had painstakingly built, everything they had fought so fiercely to protect, now teetered precariously on a razor's edge. "Remain strong," he said softly. "Truth will ultimately prevail." "I love you," Shirley whispered, and the line went dead. Back in his cell, Otis lay on the thin mattress, his gaze fixed on the unblemished gray walls. His body ached profoundly, yet his mind remained remarkably clear. They had anticipated this, prepared for the system's inevitable backlash. Now, it was time to place his trust in the solid foundations they had so carefully laid. Outside his window, a distant siren wailed. Inside his cell, Otis commenced his familiar meditation routine, drawing strength for whatever trials lay ahead. 5 days into Otis's incarceration, Dre hunched over Shirley's kitchen table, surrounded by an array of laptops and external hard drives. His eyes were bloodshot from a severe lack of sleep, but an unwavering determination kept him vigilant. "Found another backup," he announced, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practice speed. They weren't aware of the micro SD cards integrated into the barn cameras. Shirley leaned over his shoulder, her reading glasses perched precariously on her nose. "How much footage did you retrieve?" "All of it," Dre confirmed, his voice catching with suppressed anger. "The fire bombings, the gunfire, WDE's crew torturing those horses. It's all here, in high definition." "Transmit it to everyone on the list," Shirley directed, checking her phone with a sense of urgency. Every news outlet, every civil rights advocacy group, and every organization representing veterans meticulously secured encrypted copies for their legal counsel. Dre, nodding, initiated the data transfers, observing the rapid ascent of their cause on Twitter. Otis Freeman and the Justice for Freeman's farm movement were gaining significant momentum. Outside the facility, vehicles lined the thoroughfare as supporters, holding aloft protest signs, converged. The continuous chorus of supportive car horns intermingled with intermittent jeers of animosity from passing commercial trucks. Local law enforcement, present in their patrol vehicles, maintained a noticeable but unobtrusive distance. Within his confinement, Otis, despite his injuries, performed push-ups with unwavering resolve, fortifying both his physical and mental fortitude. A correctional officer of Latino heritage, identified as Rodriguez, observed through the bars. "My son, he was a SEAL as well," Rodriguez stated softly. "Force Recon. He fell in Kandahar." Otis rose slowly, acknowledging the shared pain of loss. "I am deeply sorry, brother. I saw the footage this morning. What those men inflicted upon your farm." Rodriguez's jaw tensed. "It's not right. What are they doing to you?" Before Otis could formulate a reply, clamor erupted from the prison yard. Inmates pressed against the windows, their gazes fixed on a television screen in the guard station. Breaking news stickers flashed across the display. The distressing events unfolded with brutal clarity. Wade Griom's gang, unleashing Molotov cocktails, slaughtering livestock, and hurling racial epithets as they assaulted the farmhouse. This was followed by Otis's measured defense, employing minimal force to safeguard his home. "Mercy me," a voice whispered. "The big fellow is innocent." Rodriguez watched the unfolding news coverage, his expression hardening. The entire world is witnessing this now. Beyond the correctional facility, the protest contingent swelled. Veterans, attired in their service uniforms, stood shoulder to shoulder with nascent activists. Signs bore inscriptions demanding justice and freedom for Otis. News vans choked the roadways. In her office, Shirley managed a deluge of communications from media representatives and civil rights attorneys. "Yes," she confirmed, "we possess additional visual evidence. No, Mr. Freeman never discharged his weapon. Yes, we are initiating federal civil rights litigation against the county." Dre liaised with the protest organizers, his voice resonating with unwavering conviction. "Maintain a peaceful yet vocal presence. Let them understand that we will not falter." The narrative exploded across social media platforms. Celebrities shared the visual evidence. Political figures called for formal inquiries. Military veteran associations issued public statements of support for Otis. Within the correctional institution, the atmosphere perceptibly shifted. Guards conversed in hushed tones. Inmates offered respectful nods to Otis during recreational periods. Even those previously exhibiting hostility maintained a distance, observing him with a newfound comprehension. Rodriguez delivered a fresh uniform and supplementary provisions. "The administration is growing apprehensive. The phones are ringing incessantly." Otis accepted the items with quiet grace. "Thank you, brother." In the sheriff's office, Latimer observed the escalating demonstrations through his window. His telephone buzzed incessantly with incoming calls from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. On his desk, a formal letter of resignation awaited his signature. Returning to the farm, Shirley addressed a gathering of supporters, her voice amplified by the microphone. "This matter transcends Otis's individual circumstances. It pertains to every American's inherent right to defend their domicile, irrespective of their racial background. The crowd responded with a resounding roar of affirmation. Dre stood beside her, his fist raised defiantly. Cameras flashed. Additional vehicles arrived every minute. National news crews established live broadcast positions. News anchors described the scene. A remarkable display of collective solidarity here in rural Georgia as citizens implored justice for the decorated United States Navy SEAL veteran Otis Freeman. Within his cell, Otis sat cross-legged upon his cot, eyes closed in meditative repose. The familiar sounds of the correctional facility were now punctuated by chanting emanating from the exterior. "Free Otis! Free Otis!" Rodriguez reappeared, the jingle of his keys announcing his presence. "We have some visitors for you, Freeman. Important ones." Otis opened his eyes, his countenance serene. Through his window, he could discern the burgeoning assembly, the signs, the flags, his community united, refusing to succumb to injustice. The chanting intensified, its resonance echoing through the jail's concrete corridors. No justice, no peace, free Otis, free man. A sense of hope, like the dawn, permeated the somber confines of his cell. Daybreak graced the county with the rhythmic thud of helicopter rotors. Dark FBI vehicles traversed the morning mist, converging simultaneously on 3 distinct locations. At the Griom family estate, Wade jolted awake to the sound of his front door being violently breached. "FBI on the ground now!" Tactical units swept through the premises as Wade frantically searched for a shotgun. He barely managed to grasp the weapon before being tackled by 2 federal agents. His face slammed forcefully against the wooden floor. "Bid Griom," an agent declared, securing handcuffs with practiced efficiency. "You are under arrest for federal hate crimes, attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy." Across town, parallel operations unfolded at the residences of other gang members. The element of surprise was absolute. Years of accrued arrogance disintegrated within minutes under the weight of federal authority. Within the sheriff's department, FBI agents meticulously boxed evidence and removed computers. Deputies stood aside, avoiding eye contact as their colleagues were led away in restraints. Internal affairs investigators unearthed deleted visual records, falsified official documents, and evidence of hate crimes that had been systematically concealed for years. Sheriff Latimer sat in solitary contemplation within his office, his gaze fixed upon photographs adorning his walls. Decades of public service reduced to ignominy. His hands trembled as he removed his badge. A rap at his door caused him to flinch. "Come in," he rasped. 2 FBI agents entered, their expressions grave. "Sheriff, we need to ascertain the full extent of your department's complicity with the Griom organization." Latimer nodded slowly. "I will disclose everything. Allow me to complete this first." He retrieved his letter of resignation, signing it with an air of finality. At the county detention facility, Otis gathered his meager possessions as Rodriguez unlocked his cell. "Your release documents are processed. You are a free man." Otis emerged into brilliant sunlight, met by a cacophony of deafening cheers. Hundreds of supporters lined the roadway. Shirley rushed forward to embrace him, tears coursing down her cheeks. Dre stood nearby, a broad grin on his face. "The FBI apprehended them all," Shirley whispered. "Every last one." News cameras documented the emotional reunion as Otis held his wife. His quiet dignity conveyed volumes. Veterans in the assembly offered salutes. Young activists chanted his name in unison. Across town, Wade Griom occupied federal custody. His former swagger completely evaporated. FBI investigators presented a compelling array of evidence, including surveillance footage, financial statements, witness testimonies, and encrypted communications. The sheer magnitude of his organization's transgressions astounded even seasoned agents. "You are facing a minimum of 25 years to life," the lead investigator stated. "Federal hate crime charges alone carry significant penalties." "I demand a lawyer," Wade muttered, his voice betraying a tremor. In the parking lot of the sheriff's department, Mike Latimer systematically emptied his patrol vehicle, placing his equipment into a cardboard box. Younger deputies observed silently as their former superior walked toward his pickup truck. He paused, casting a backward glance at the building where he had served for 40 years. "I should have conducted myself with greater integrity," he remarked to no one in particular. He then departed, leaving his shame behind. At the federal courthouse, Wade and his associates, clad in orange jumpsuits and shackles, shuffled forward. Their arraignment attracted national media attention. Civil rights leaders filled the courtroom gallery. The reading of the charges consumed 10 minutes. "How do you plead?" the presiding judge inquired. Wade's legal counsel responded, "Not guilty, Your Honor." Murmurs filled the courtroom. The prosecutor stood, holding aloft a substantial file. "The government possesses overwhelming evidence, encompassing video recordings, DNA analysis, ballistics reports, and multiple corroborating witness statements. We shall be seeking the maximum permissible sentences." In the gallery, Otis observed with composure. The individuals who had sought to dismantle his life now appeared diminished, insignificant. Their animosity had cost them dearly. Outside, reporters swarmed for statements. Wade's former bravado had vanished, replaced by palpable fear as federal marshals escorted him to a waiting vehicle. Photographers captured his defeated expression, the visage of utter capitulation. At the Freeman farm, the community convened to assist in the reconstruction efforts. Veteran organizations diligently repaired the incinerated barn. Local youth actively painted over instances of racist graffiti. The land, much like its owner, began to heal. Dre provided direction to young volunteers, his leadership capabilities growing more pronounced with each passing day. "This," he told them, "is what justice truly appears like. Not retribution, but justice." FBI agents continued their exhaustive examination of Sheriff's Department records, uncovering years of systemic corruption. Deputies came forward, offering sworn testimonies regarding concealed criminal activities, fabricated official reports, and pervasive racial bias. In Washington, civil rights organizations cited the Freeman case as definitive proof of ongoing rural terrorism targeting black landowners. Congressional inquiries were scheduled. New legislative measures were drafted. The local news station that had previously disparaged Otis issued a formal retraction and a public apology. Their biased reporting subsequently became a subject of study in media ethics courses. At the federal detention center, Wade Griom stared at concrete walls, his ill-gotten empire in ruins. Other inmates deliberately avoided him. His name became synonymous with abject failure. Sheriff Latimer's resignation garnered national headlines. Editorial sections engaged in discourse regarding the role of law enforcement in perpetuating systemic racism. Police reform advocates incorporated the case into their ongoing campaigns. Federal prosecutors meticulously constructed an irrefutable legal case, systematically documenting every offense, every act of concealment, and every manifestation of hatred. The amassed evidence filled dozens of containers. Justice, though gradual, advanced with an unstoppable momentum. Otis Freeman walked through his property gate, each step deliberate and measured. The morning sun cast elongated shadows across his land, where hundreds of supporters had gathered. Hand-painted signs bobbed above the assembled throng. "Justice for Freeman Farm" and "Stand with Big O" were prominently displayed. Shirley grasped his hand tightly as they navigated through the jubilant crowd. Veterans, adorned in their service caps, stood at attention. Young activists who had rallied behind his cause wiped tears from their eyes. Local farmers, both black and white, offered respectful nods. "Welcome home, brother," called James Washington, president of the Black Farmers Association. He stepped forward to embrace Otis. "Your unwavering stance here, it signified something profound. It initiated change." Dre pushed through the crowd, leading a contingent of young men carrying lumber and tools. "We are prepared whenever you are, Big O," he stated, gesturing toward the charred remnants of the barn. "It's time to rebuild." Otis surveyed the extent of the damage with unwavering composure. Blackened beams reached skyward like contorted appendages. Bullet impacts marred the remaining walls, yet the foundational structure remained steadfast, mirroring his own resilience. "Let's commence the work," Otis stated simply. The crowd spontaneously organized itself. Veterans formed specialized work crews. Church volunteers established communal food stations. Children diligently cleared away debris. The sounds of hammers and saws now filled the air, replacing the echoes of gunfire from mere weeks prior. Reverend Marshall led a prayer circle near the ancient oak tree. "This land," he intoned, "was acquired through the toil and sacrifice of freed slaves. Today, we reclaim it, not solely for Brother Freeman, but for all who champion justice." Shirley moved through the throng, introducing Otis to civil rights attorneys who had journeyed from across the nation. "We are about to announce something significant," she informed him with a smile. "Something designed to safeguard other farmers like yourself." By midday, the framework for the new barn had taken substantial shape. Otis toiled alongside everyone, his powerful hands demonstrating precision on each beam. Young men observed with admiration as he exhibited correct construction techniques. His quiet strength now served as a potent source of inspiration, dispelling any lingering fear. "My grandfather constructed the original barn," Otis shared with them during a respite for refreshments. "He completed it shortly after acquiring this land in 1889. They attempted to drive him away as well." He wiped his brow. "But Freeman men, we do not retreat." News crews documented the ongoing rebuilding endeavor. Reporters interviewed community members regarding the transformative shifts occurring within the county. The FBI's extensive investigation had exposed decades of ingrained corruption. A period of reform was commencing within local law enforcement agencies. White supremacist organizations were dissipating like insects exposed to sunlight. "Mr. Freeman," a young reporter inquired, "do you feel vindicated?" Otis considered the question while observing Dre directing a roofing team. "This is not about vindication," he responded. "It is about maintaining one's position and imparting to the subsequent generation that they are not obligated to endure hatred." By late afternoon, supporters had erected a temporary platform near the Nosson barn. Civil rights leaders and legal authorities convened as Shirley assumed the microphone. "Today, we are announcing the establishment of the Rural Legacy Protection Trust," she declared, "a legal entity committed to defending minority landowners against discrimination, intimidation, and unlawful appropriation." Applause cascaded across the property. Otis stood quietly beside his wife as she elaborated on the trust's objectives. Major civil rights organizations had pledged their unwavering support. Legal firms offered their services pro bono. The Freeman case would serve as a foundational model for combating rural acts of terror. "My husband has imparted a crucial lesson to us all," Shirley continued. "He demonstrated that a single individual's resolute stand can galvanize an entire community to rise collectively. That justice may progress at a deliberate pace, but it ultimately reaches those who persevere." The newly constructed barn gleamed under the descending sun, its fresh timber a striking contrast to the weathered structures surrounding it. Children engaged in spirited games of tag amidst the support posts, while their parents shared sustenance and narratives. The property vibrated with renewed life and purpose. Dre found Otis inspecting the barn's interior. "Strong bones," the young man remarked, "built to endure." "Like anything truly valuable," Otis replied. They stood in comfortable silence, master and apprentice, observing the lengthening shadows cast across the freshly laid floorboards. Through the open doorways, they could observe families lingering on the lawn, reluctant to depart from this moment of profound triumph. "You've made a difference, Big O," Dre said softly. "You changed me too. You showed us all what true strength signifies." Otis placed a substantial hand on the young man's shoulder. Around them, the new barn settled securely into its foundation. Each beam and plank bore testament to community solidarity, unwavering resilience, and the profound power of asserting one's principles. The property, once a scene of intense violence, now thrummed with an atmosphere of hope. Children who had once sought refuge from gunfire now played freely. Families who had witnessed events with apprehension now shared meals together. The land itself seemed to exhale, as if shedding the weight of past tribulations. Supporters commenced stringing decorative lights along the barn's exterior, transforming the structure into a luminous beacon visible from the main thoroughfare. The warm illumination attracted additional neighbors, evolving the rebuilding process into an impromptu community celebration. Local farmers contributed fresh produce from their fields. Church kitchens provided hot, prepared dishes. Musicians congregated near the ancient oak tree, filling the evening air with the sounds of gospel and blues. The property, once a site of conflict, was now a nexus of gathering, a potent symbol of profound transformation. 3 months had elapsed since the rebuilding efforts had commenced. The autumnal sun hung low in the afternoon sky as Otis Freeman walked through his fields, accompanied by a retinue of young individuals trailing behind him. His substantial frame moved with deliberate purpose, pausing periodically to demonstrate precise techniques for soil analysis and crop rotation. "Observe here," he stated, crouching to collect a handful of dark earth. "Healthy soil reveals its secrets. One merely needs to know how to listen." Dre stood at his side, intently watching as the elder man let the soil sift through his fingers. Behind them, 6 teenagers from the neighborhood leaned in closer, their faces etched with seriousness and concentration. They had been visiting the farm 3 times a week since the summer, drawn by tales of the man who had confronted the Graham gang. "The land teaches patience," Otis continued, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded SEAL teams decades prior. "One cannot hasten that which requires time to mature." The farm had prospered significantly since the period of violence. New fencing gleamed under the sun's rays. The reconstructed barn housed advanced equipment, financed by supporters who had rallied to the cause. More importantly, the property had evolved into a communal hub for young individuals seeking guidance and purpose. "Mr. Freeman," called out Marcus, one of the younger boys, "is it true that you subdued 3 men simultaneously that night?" Otis straightened slowly, brushing accumulated dirt from his overalls. "We do not focus on the combat," he stated firmly. "That was a matter of survival. This," he gestured to the fertile farmland surrounding them, "this is about living." Dre nodded, grasping the deeper insights embedded within Otis's pronouncements. The elder man was imparting more than agricultural knowledge. He was demonstrating how to channel animosity into constructive purpose, how to stand firm without resorting to violence. They proceeded to the vegetable gardens, where orderly rows of autumnal crops stretched towards the horizon. Otis illustrated proper harvesting techniques, his large hands surprisingly gentle with delicate produce. The teenagers worked alongside him, their movements gaining confidence with each lesson. "My grandfather used to remark," Otis told them as they labored, "farming is akin to life. You reap precisely what you sow. There are no shortcuts, no excuses." A small boy, perhaps 7 years of age, observed from the fence line. He had begun appearing regularly, drawn by curiosity about the renowned farm and its proprietor. Dre noticed him and approached, leaving the others with Otis. "Would you like to learn as well, little man?" Dre inquired, leaning against the fence. The boy nodded shyly. "Is it true what they say about Mr. Freeman?" Dre watched Otis demonstrate the correct method for handling tools, his movements precise despite his considerable size. The setting sun cast elongated shadows, enhancing the imposing silhouette of the large man. "People formed many assumptions about Big O," Dre commented. "They perceived his quiet nature as weakness. They believed his size indicated slowness." He smiled at the memory of those assumptions being thoroughly dispelled. The boy's eyes widened. "But he's genuinely strong, isn't he? Like a superhero." Dre shook his head. "Superior to that. He's real. Everything he embodies, he has earned. Every skill, every triumph was attained through diligent effort and unwavering fidelity to his authentic self." Across the field, Otis was instructing the teenagers on how to inspect plants for disease, his voice faintly carried on the evening breeze. His students absorbed every word, their faces reflecting the same respect that Dre had experienced when he first began learning from the elder man. "Do you observe his demeanor?" Dre asked the boy. "Careful, deliberate. This man dedicated 20 years of his life as a Navy SEAL before returning to cultivate his family's ancestral land. Now, he is imparting to us that there is strength in nurturing growth, in fostering community. The farm's newly installed security systems glinted discreetly in the fading light. Cameras and sensors were seamlessly integrated into the rural environment. Their necessity had significantly diminished. Word had circulated extensively regarding the consequences faced by those who had threatened Freeman Farm. Sometimes, the most formidable individuals do not conform to outward expectations, Dre continued, observing Otis guiding his students toward the barn. They presumed him to be merely an aging, overweight man, but that overweight man is a lion in agricultural attire. The boy gazed at Otis with a newfound depth of understanding. The large farmer moved across his land like a vigilant guardian, each step assured and purposeful. His students followed, carrying tools and harvested produce, their postures erect with pride. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the evening hour. Birds offered their vespers in sunset melodies. The farm settled into its peaceful cadence, its strength flowing with the quiet, profound depth of an underground current. Otis raised a hand in greeting as he passed, and the boy responded with a hesitant wave. His gaze followed the farmer's broad back, now perceiving what Dre had grasped months prior, that true power often resided in unassuming attire, and that justice could flourish as reliably as crops in fertile soil. The autumn wind rustled through the remaining corn stalks, carrying the earthy aroma of the soil and the promise of growth. On Freeman Farm, the day's labor continued, a continuation of generations past. It was different now, perhaps, but fundamentally rooted in the same profound truth, that standing one's ground encompassed more than mere confrontation. It involved cultivating something genuinely worth defending.